How's it going? This is Chad, and this is a little video about how I built a shooting range. So we got a couple shots here. This was around the 1st of March this last year, and as you can see from those initial pictures, this area of my dad's, creek runs around it, but it's not really good for anything. We used to keep some cows out here. They've been moved off. But he hadn't used it the whole time I've been alive, since in the early 80s. So asked if I could look around through there, see if I come up with any ideas, and I found what looked to be a pretty decent area. So as you can see over here on the right, the main part of the creek, and then up in the center, just center right there at the top, you see the feeder creek comes in, then that little bit of a jag that goes around to the left. Now this was after I cut the first good lane of trees through it. We're getting into I think more into April by this point, but I got majority of a full lane of trees all the way from the edge of the field to the end of the creek here. So I used a skid steer during all of this, and my dad has, several attachment tools. Main thing I used was the tree cutting tool, and we got a big shredder that'll come into play in this section right here. But I also used the bucket and a little, like a claw grabber, to move a couple sticks around. But as I found going through this, I was able to use the tree cutter to cut trees, lift them up by their trunks, and then move them around and stack them where I needed later. But also, as you can see from here, it's fairly out in the middle of nowhere. There's nobody anywhere close that lives within, I want to say, 3 miles of this area. All the places, all of my shooting directions are surrounded by trees. So I cut a few lanes. I had to cheat and speed up the drone footage in a couple of these sections just to keep this video from getting too awful long. Now that that turned out to be what I later decided was going to be my main target area. But when I first started this, I had no idea what that would actually look like. So I was really planning on just cutting a few lanes through the trees. But after making my way over there, that big clearing worked out pretty good. So this is coming up through the second lane that I cut. But you can see one pile of trees there. Eventually I'd like to get somebody that has a mulch, like commercial mulcher, to come through and take all these stacks. This is a very sped up version of a hyperlapse with a GoPro camera, but I just mounted it on the inside of the skid steer. And this was me getting to the far end of the first lane that I cut through. Then it finally dawned on me that I got a GoPro. So you can kind of see how narrow this started out. And as I progressed, I widened it up. At this point, I can pretty well drive through, but I just want to show kind of what it looks like a little bit slower. But I was able to use this one little attachment and do probably 85-90% of the work out there. And I just cut a tree down, move it out of the way, go up to the next one. I kind of walked the path beforehand and got a bunch of little red flags and just kind of made a path so I could see one flag and get up to it, to where I'd pull that flag away, I could see the next flag through the trees, and I just went flag to flag to flag and was able to go through. So this is actually cutting the second lane, and this is heading over towards the clearing. But tried to slow it down a little bit here to normal hyperlapse speed, just so you can kind of get an idea of what's actually going on. There's blades at the bottom of this cutter, and I just hit the hydraulics inside, pinches those blades together, allows me to either cut through a tree branch, or I can stop part of the way through and use that to lift the tree up and out, usually pulling it up by the roots. But I say I moved a bunch of the big ones out of the direct area that I was working in, but I've got several good sized piles of pretty much driftwood at this point. It's a bunch of old dead trees that I moved and cut down, so I didn't cut up too many fresh growing trees, but I had to get a few out of there. But I think at some point, if I can get all that turned into mulch and use that for a ground cover, it'll help prevent weeds from coming back and give a nicer place to walk on. But that's one of the this year projects. So getting this part done was what I focused all of my free time in 2021 on getting done. And I mean, it got to the point where I got it done, so I guess I accomplished that goal. Now coming up, we did not know that there was used to be a fence in here. So what you're about to see, I had to get worked up to this barbed wire fence and then pull the T-posts out and cut the wire, roll it out of the way, get it so I could roll over the barbed wire without getting it tangled in the tracks. And got through that point, kept on moving, and before I knew it, I was down to what I call the small clearing. But there's a little clearing at the end of this path, and I'll be setting up some targets down there to have. Ideally, I'm trying to get it set up so I can have multiple shooting angles in places where you have to walk from one point to another point. But you can see right there from pretty much start to finish how I went from no path to now I've got a path all the way up here to, you can see the yellow dead Johnson grass back there. That is the little clearing. And before you know it, I've punched through and we are into the clearing. So this was an exciting day. I want to say this was in the middle of April, but you can see that little clearing kind of in the center of the screen. And then I got to the big clearing. Decided to hook up Shredder, and I will freely admit that I was very surprised at how this turned out after I got done with this. Like I said, me or my dad, we hadn't really been down in this area for, I mean, decades, honestly. So I got out, cleaned up all the way to the bank of the creek, and just cut out all of this Johnson grass and winter grass. It's just a bunch of weeds pretty much that grew up there. And there's a few trees here and there. A lot of them were just dead tree trunks that were still standing. Knocked down a bunch of those, but anyways, I got kind of all around the perimeter of this little section cut down. And then it's like as soon as I was able to cut down a decent amount of all the weeds, the whole outlook just changed. Like I was able to see that this was going to turn into a really, really cool place. And once I did that, I just started kind of shifting my ideas in my head to plan on using this area as kind of my main target setup area, at least for pistol, shotgun. Rifle, still mainly use the long range lane that I cut, but I have a lot of pistol, shotgun targets. I was even able to make a 100-yard target at this little area. I had to cut another lane through the trees, which I didn't bother filming that, but you'll see kind of the end result here at the end of the video. So, this is me just bit by bit cleaning up and getting all these weeds out of the way. There's a bunch of small branches and busted tree trunks that were just rotten from laying on the ground for years, this shredder will cut up anything up to, oh, I'd say 2 inches if it's, you know, a more porous wood. But I was able to bust up everything out here, and it's just, it was amazing to me to see the progress from beginning to where it is now. It just looks nothing like what it did when I first started this. I mean, you can already tell compared to the beginning of this section with the shredder to now how much cleaner and open it feels. I fully appreciate the fact that I'm very lucky to be able to have got to do this, and I really appreciate that I got to spend most of last year getting back into shooting and getting all the range built, and this year is going to be the practicing and just getting better and better and better. So there's kind of a after image. And then what I decided was, you know, it's taken a pretty good walk to go from where I park my truck all the way down, halfway down the long range, and then take a right, go another 90 or so yards down the first path to the small clearing, and then back around and make my way to the big clearing. So I wiggled my way through the trees and found a little bit of a path that I was able to mark off, and then decided to use the cutter again and cleared up some trees. And now you can see this path comes all the way down, and I pretty much made myself a shortcut, so I'm able to go in from where I park, and now I'm down at the big clearing. And I started in a completely different area. So this has been a pretty fun project. I was able to clear this up enough, cut enough trees on the sides, and find a path that didn't have big tree trunks where I would run over them. At this point I'm able to even drive all the way down. So the parking far away and lugging everything down a couple hundred yards is not even a factor anymore, because I can just drive my truck right down through this path, and it eventually pops out down at the big clearing where I have all my pistol targets set up. So here we go. Where we're flying over right now is the main long range area that I widened out. Would be able to go back into the field all the way back to the road, I think, and get close to an 800 yard shot. I know at least 700 yards is able here, but you can see some of my steel targets down at the trees there, and it ends up with a creek. You can see there's plenty of trees behind to catch any stray bullets that are missed by the targets. But then we take a right, go down my little path here. So this first clearing, I haven't really done anything with this yet. I've got a couple plans for some like pistol stages, and then we pass around here to the big clearing. And this was, I want to say, back in September when I filmed this. It was after the flood and everything. I had to clean everything up again after it flooded, but I have not really even got all the targets set up yet, and I haven't cut out the target in the middle of the screen right there. I pushed that back to the creek and pulled out all the trees there, set up a tire backstop filled with dirt, and then I set up a lot of targets along the angle, or along the tree line. So it's come along pretty cool. I made myself a little storage area for, you know, hammer, stapler, little paper targets, where I can keep them under a tarp and not have to carry them back and forth all the time. But this path here is, you can see the vehicle tracks down there where I am able to drive through here. Actually, I hadn't even driven through here yet. That's all the tracks from the skid steer, but from where I'm parked right there, I can drive all the way down to where I was standing before. You can kind of see the attachments down there on the ground. But that's a little bit of all the tools that I used to put this together. I realized this video got kind of long, so I'm taking the walkthrough videos, like from ground level, putting them in a separate video. But Texas Star, spinner, plate rack, that's all set up. I've got another, I don't know, 30 or so targets set up at this point. You know, it's one of those things I've just been building on little by little. Whenever I get extra money, either more shooting accessories or better targets or more targets, just adding on, and always making this a little bit better. So kind of turned out pretty cool. I'm very, very happy with the end result, and I'm not even finished with it. I still have a few more ideas that I'll be implementing, but compared to, you know, what it started looking like, which was a dead piece of land full of trees and a weird creek running around it, it's actually turned out pretty good. So, you know, be on the lookout. Next video I will be putting together is going to be me walking through it from ground level, and then get into the fun shooting videos. So here's another shot after I got a few more targets set up. So you can see down tires at the end. But anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.